What's going on, everyone? I'm StarScript founder Zach James, and you're watching the StarScript Observatory, where creators and fans get discovered. I'm here at Universal Polymath Productions, the home of robot nature, and I'm here with the leader himself, DPAK, aka the other DPAK.
What's good, brother? How you doing? Welcome.
What's going on?
Just here, and just in the middle of working on a song when you came in, and excited to get this one out pretty soon.
What's the song called?
It's called Take the Big Love. It's our newest single, and we're going to be putting it out in just a couple weeks in mid-March before we head to South by Southwest for a little tour in Austin. Play some shows on the way and on the way back.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the second time you'll be going to South by Southwest,
Yeah, we were there
right?
last year. We did a showcase with Soulful of Noise, and this year we're going to do a few more shows, and then we're also going to hit some cities on the way. Tucson, I believe, Albuquerque, and other, Phoenix. I think we're just lining up the tour right now for August.
Okay, so lots going on currently, which we're going to get to in a little bit.
Yeah,
but
man.
for now, I want to start with the history of the other DPAK. This is episode 5 of the StarScript Observatory. However, you were actually the very first person I interviewed.
Wow.
And I did a written article on you. So this is before we were audio, before we were video. You were sort of the first experiment. I did a couple other experiments, and then we had John Park on as our episode 1.
Nice.
So now you're making for episode 5. Really,
we go.
Secretly in a way, the second interview.
Congratulations, man. Studio's looking good now. Starting to
You helped me
step
build
up.
it.
Oh, well, hey, I'm here to help, man.
Yeah. You got to go with the pros when dealing with sound, audio,
The
and
studio
video.
right here is pretty dope. We got a lot of Disney stuff going on here. We'll talk about that as we go.
I'm excited to get into that also, but first I want to hear about how it all started.
Well, how it started? Me as a musician, or just where we are now in LA?
That's it. You as a musician. How did it start?
Me as a musician was super young. I mean, my parents were musical. My mom was a classical in a singer, Carnatic classical, South Indian style singer. And so I grew up surrounded by music always. But my parents started me on violin when I was super young. Like by age 6, I was full-time lessons with a Russian teacher in Maryland, and also an Indian classical teacher in Maryland also, and then was traveling to India learning violin first. But even before I was really getting official lessons, I was always kind of listening to music, hearing theme songs and jingles and commercials and singing along. So my parents kind of knew that I had a musical, path, and I'm sure, obviously, they're a big part of it. My dad was also a veena player. A veena is a South Indian instrument, like kind of like the sitar. You've probably heard of the sitar, like Ravi Shankar and the Beatles. Mm-hmm. So a veena is like a South Indian style instrument. So he was playing that. So I was just always surrounded by music and going to family gatherings and things like that, where all my cousins and aunts and uncles were always singing and stuff. It's like, you go to like a family gathering and, everyone's houses were different, but ours would be like a bunch of people sitting around performing classical music for each other. And that was like what a party was like for us. And it was like a very kind of classy, conservative South Indian style upbringing. So that was a huge part of my influence. But of course, I was also a big Michael Jackson fan. I was always listening to Michael Jackson songs, trying to mimic and copy and sing along, do the moonwalk and do kinds of dancing, and then, just getting into tons of music along the way. So, I mean, later on, I just sort of rebelled against all of the lessons and all the structure and became more of a freestyle musician, more of a writer. It's kind of thing you see about personalities when you're young. Some people are like, in the orchestra and they're playing the music that's there and they're trying to get better at doing that. I was sitting there taking the lines that, Mozart, say, wrote, which I thought were, of course, beautiful, but I was just thinking of variations and then another variation and kind of coming up with my own version of that, which in the orchestra, like, that's not a good thing. You get kicked out. But then I realized later, I was like, oh, that's where maybe the personality of a writer when they're young. You don't know it. When you're young, I was like, oh, okay. I realized later that maybe I'm just more of a writer. So, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to be in the LA Phil necessarily, but maybe, as I get older, I'll write a piece that maybe the LA Phil plays, and I'll be the composer of that, for example. So just started noticing personality things. I got into guitar around middle school. I got into Metallica and Nirvana and Soundgarden and Radiohead and bands like that. Like a lot of kind of got into old school grungy rock and stuff like that. And just really got into that as a rebellion against the violin and the classical structure for a while, and got into guitar and also play a lot of video games growing up too, which is interesting. People ask me how I learned piano. And it's like, well, because of video games. Like, what do you mean? I was like, well, the theme songs of Final Fantasy, which are like these amazing role-playing games, which were beautifully composed by this Japanese composer named Nobuo Uematsu, really inspired me, these compositions. And I just wanted to play these theme songs to Final Fantasy, these role-playing games, and I wanted to play them musically, and I just got into the piano and started playing the theme songs and character songs for a lot of the Final Fantasy characters on the piano. And that was my initial learning of how to play piano, was literally playing video game music, and then started really getting into freestyle and improvising there too. So by high school, I was like doing a lot of writing. I wrote an album on the guitar, singing, and some piano music by the time I was like 13 or 14. And I was also really into the Beach Boys and getting into a cappella music. And so that got into harmonies, and my name's DPAK, so I got into creating this concept called DPAK acapella, which breaks into deep acapella. It's like so it's like a play on words. Like it's some deep acapella, but it's a deep acapella. Obviously, you get it.
And I've heard some of those recordings where you're just every single sound on there is your voice.
Yeah, like
and you just loop
beatboxing.
it.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, like I didn't know what producing in studio was, and looking back, I'm like, oh, again, just so we're talking about the beginnings of writing. This was the beginnings of producing. Was going back and forth and layering my voice with on a computer. A free program that my friend Brandon, who amazing guitar player that I played with for years, he was in some of my older bands, which we'll get to in a second. He had shown me this program while we were in school together, and called Cool Edit. And so I started using this program with the cheap microphone we got from Radio Shack. Not like thinking about being a producer or anything, but just wanting to express harmonies. I loved harmony, loved the voice and how it blends with the voice. I loved being in choirs and singing with other people, but also being by myself. I'm an only child. And I think that kind of led me to like just being really creative and making games by myself. And so I was sitting in my room, playing these video games, playing piano, just kind of by myself, learning lots of things, like being alone. And I got into recording my voice on top of my voice. And the first thing I ever recorded was the Beach Boys song, Good Vibrations. Like,
really? That's the
first thing a cappella that I recorded. Other than actually, I think I did the national anthem and some other little things like that first. Okay. But in terms of a full arrangement that I created, where I came up with the parts that would be the a cappella expression of a song that usually had instruments. Because other things were already a cappella. Like I would do choir songs, I would do the national anthem and things like that, and do harmonies. But taking the Beach Boys song, Good Vibrations, and hearing the instruments and thinking like, like just kind of like laying the parts down like that, one by one. Ooh, bop, bop, good vibrations, bop, bop, like, and just layering like all of these things, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's like 10 layers, there's 12 layers, and all together it sounds like a full orchestra. And people thought it were instruments, but it was just really just the voice. And
that's really an important song in musical history. I remember learning in history of rock and roll that it broke what at least the teacher and what we were being taught was called the ABAB format, which is that you have a verse, then a chorus, then a verse, then a chorus, then you have some type of breakdown, which is C, because it's something different than the verse and different than the chorus. Then you do a verse, chorus again, and the song's pretty much over. So that was pretty much the standard of all songs out there. And our teacher broke down Good Vibrations. We all
good example
watched it. And it ended up being like G, F, H, I, J, and like stuff like that.
Yep. So that song definitely was a life changer, just because it's exactly for those reasons. It started this deep acapella thing, which I ended up doing a few more covers, but then the writer in me started coming up with original deep acapella songs, and started like coming into doo-wop, kind of Bobby McFerrin inspired, beatbox, vocal acapella, dancing around kind of stuff, and just.
So what was like the order of like progression with your music? That it started with violin?
So with violin and also singing at the same time.
And singing.
Because
that was at what age?
4,
and
5,
then you
6.
picked up, you rebelled from violin at some point.
11, 12.
Did you stop playing violin for a while and start playing piano more when you were in the video game world?
I stopped playing to the amount that I was playing, because I was in activities that involved a lot of playing, like orchestras and things.
Okay.
But I think I was still jamming it at home as again, playing with the video game music and coming up with the lines and coming up with my own things, and also jamming on top of like some rock music or something like that. And also I really got into hip hop major. Like I got really into rap because of all the beatboxing. I grew up in Maryland. There's a lot of freestyle rappers. There's a lot of there's like a breaker scene, like break dancing and stuff. And I was like popping and locking and, beatboxing and doing freestyle, like hip hop stuff, where we'd get into a circle and people would be rapping, and then and someone else would beatbox and they would pass it off to me and I'd start rapping. And so it was like a really urban kind of scene over there. And so I was really into that.
Okay.
But that that was guitar and piano sort of at the same time. As instruments that I taught myself, though, self-taught.
Okay.
I was like, just listening to a song and playing by ear. And I've always been more of an ear musician, not as much of in music theory. Never really went to, school and college or anything for that. Like when I went to college, it was pre-med and pre-law. I wasn't for music. I didn't go to Berkeley or learn theory or anything. It was all just more like listening and playing, like all the Final Fantasy music, even classical music. Like I had a neighbor named Chanu, who was learning Beethoven, a very complicated piece called the Beethoven Pathétique. And it's like it's like this really complicated piece, and I would hear it by ear, and then just go learn it myself without looking at the music. That was like a thing.
And it was something else I remember when first meeting you that I was impressed by, was that usually anytime someone's has to tune their instrument, they're always looking at a tuner.
Right.
And you were just like, no, I know what E is, or I know what it is. And so you would just make, how a lot of people do with guitars, you'd go to E, with your top string, and then you'd tune the rest of your guitar just by ear. Yeah. And it's just a very unique, usually there's a couple different strategies people use for tuning their guitar. They're using like obviously a tuner, or they like tune the first note, and then they can use like harmonics to tune stuff like that.
Sure.
But I felt like you were just like had something different, which just showed me that you were just like in a way like a unique embodiment of the musical spirit.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of violinists, and there's a lot of violinists is very common more in violinists, but there's a thing called perfect pitch or whatever it's called. It's like a phrase. Okay. And I think it's, some people say it's developable, some people say it's not. I always in the belief that anyone can learn anything. That's like my philosophy, just to keep possibility for everybody open. So, I don't know, I was always told when I was young that I had that or whatever, where, I could hear the A and then like, tune the string to A, and it's usually, pretty close. Like these days, I haven't been sitting there playing in orchestras and hearing that same A over and over again. I'm also really getting into alternate tunings. I think 440 hertz was like back in the day the norm. And then, really getting into 432 and 444 and like 528 for C's and things like that. So now I'm not even sure if I might have deprogrammed myself from locking into the A now, in a way. Where, but it's still relatively, you get me on a guitar, I'll tune it to itself. Or if I hear, generally if I can hear a song like Michael, she was more like a beauty queen from a movie scene, something like that. There's a good chance we can check this on the recording later, or you all out there can check it. But there's a good chance that that's probably the key it's in, unless. Gotcha.
So you like use a song that you're familiar with, and you're like, okay, we know that note from that song is that.
And I think that's more of a memory thing. I think it's just memory, and I think again, I think since vibration, we're all vibration, we all have it in ourselves. I think we all have it. It's just a matter of just hearing it.
Sure.
I just feel like maybe I was just listening to it more as a kid, and just I honed that, I guess. So I was able to like tune a guitar pretty accurately without a tuner for a long time. These days, I think it's also practice. It's just like, remember back in the day, we all used to know phone numbers and memorize them.
Right.
And I've made it a practice to continue doing that, but if you don't do it, it kind of fades. So I've been on stages, and like I'm at a big show, and I'm using the tuner these days a lot. So, I think just a little bit of dependence on that, but I'm doing it because I want to be in sync with the whole band, and that's on more of a professional way of going.
Gotcha.
But if I'm at someone's house and there's a guitar sitting there and you're not playing with other people, I can tune it pretty quickly. I'll tune it to itself. It'll be in tune. There's a good chance it'll be in tune, like with whatever the system is, but it's not even that big a deal. As long as it sounds good, it sounds good,
Okay, cool. So let's like fast forward to like in like your late teens, and then
high school, college is really where things got pivotal, because I didn't know what my path was going to be.
Okay.
I was on the path of being a tennis player. I was like spending 4 hours a day playing tennis, like on that athlete path. But then I was also like thinking about being a doctor. I never was thinking about being a musician at all in high school as an actual future thing. It wasn't in my reality, it wasn't in my culture that could be necessarily like a professional thing. It was more about, what kind of job do you want to get when you're older? That's the culture I grew up in. So it's going to be, are you going to be an engineer? You're going to be in computer science. You're going to be in mathematics, or going to be in law or medicine. And so I was like, I'm like, well, I'm not really that pressed about it. It's all good to me. I like everything. I like music. I like food, and I like science. So I was just, I think I remember a funny question I asked when I was really young was, what doctor makes the most money? And I was told anesthesiologist and neurosurgeon. And I was like, well, neurosurgeons just seems cool because I'm into the brain. So I just said that. And I think I just blindly said that because I've personality-wise, I've always been into just 100% choosing definitively something.
Okay.
Knowing that you can always choose again something later. And I think that's been a part of my development of my personality, has been someone who just chooses. And I think I like that. Looking back, is like I'd rather be choosing even if it's the wrong choice. 'Cause I don't think you can really ever make the wrong choice. I think you just choose, and you only know by choosing where you are in your path.
It's
and then
totally
and that leads you to the next thing, versus being in limbo where you just don't know all the time.
The indecision, I think you got to go. You just got to go in one choice, and then you're like, okay, wow, this wasn't the right path. But definitely always,
or it was the right path, and that path led you to the next thing.
And that's just like accepting, like having faith in your choices. What I always like to say, trust yourself, have faith in your choices, no matter what happens. Like everything happened for a reason. That was the best choice with all the variables that you had, everything that you were aware of. You chose to go this direction. So I mean, I didn't know
if I was going to be... Oh, this is pretty cool, by the way. We're going to check this out later, but this is called Logic Pro. It's an amazing program. I use it for composing. I use it for the Disney stuff.
Okay, cool. I want to take another like 10 minutes or so and just go through what led you up to this point so we could go into the present stuff.
Totally. So... I think I just chose to be a neurosurgeon.
Okay.
And I said I'm going to do that.
Okay.
And so I did all this stuff. I went to this medical program and National Youth Leadership Forum. Went out to Houston and Baylor and College of Medicine. Was studying heart surgeries and watching all this different stuff when I was 16. I graduated high school when I was 16 years old. I'd skipped grades and I was ahead in math and pretty high score in the SATs, all that kind of stuff. I was doing that very stereotypical Indian, Asian thing of just, excelling
studious.
In school. Very studious and, but also doing lots of different things, extracurricular activities, being in the orchestra, being in acting, doing Shakespeare, playing on the sports tennis team. So it was like just kind of a well-rounded person that's focused on college. And, we were always told for going to a good college, you need to have really good grades, lots of extracurriculars, and like a very well-rounded persona. And that's how I was developed by my parents. And again, I look back and go, oh, thank God. Of course, as a kid, you're getting rebelling. You don't want to do all these. I'm like, I want to play.
You have no free Saturdays.
I have no free this or that. I'm doing a million activities. But
I never got to watch X-Men growing up because it was always in karate on Saturdays. And
but
so I missed all like the comic book.
It worked out.
Spider-Man and X-Men.
But they say, when you're younger, if your skills are being developed, it's going to, your brain develops really when you're young.
Sure.
And so I look back, I'm like, thank God for my highly ambitious, motivated Indian parents being a first-generation American here with all these opportunities to learn different things that we had here. In America. I grew up in Maryland. I was growing up there on the East Coast in Columbia, Maryland, with a very highly competitive system with a lot of Asians, a lot of people that were really highly competitive in school. And so, I ended up doing that and getting into a University of Maryland, getting a pretty amazing scholarship to go there. And I ended up choosing the pre-med path. But when I got to college, I was very confused, still didn't know what I was doing. And so I changed my major a lot, or I changed my secondary major a lot.
Okay.
So we had a primary and a secondary major. I kept my primary major neurobiology, physiology. And I kept that the whole time, but I rotated my secondary major until I went through engineering and math and psychology, even economics. And then I locked into criminology, criminal justice, which was basically pre-law. And I got really into that. So that became my school path. But while that was happening, I fell into a cappella, the college a cappella scene. If people out there have seen the movie Pitch Perfect, which is a recent movie that kind of covers the whole a cappella world and the fun of it, the fraternity vibe, and there's a whole culture of college a cappella. It's like a big thing. It's very, very famous around the country. It became famous, I think, because of the Pitch Perfect movie. But I was in college before that, and so we were in this world of touring, and I got really used to what it was like to be a touring musician. Because I fell into this a cappella group that was all male, a very fraternity-based thing where they had alumni and hazing and all that kind of freshman stuff and all that party stuff. But it was based around the culture of singing a cappella music. So it was like a fraternity that sang of guys. And it'd been around for like 20-something years. And they were like a very famous a cappella group. And they'd been on TV. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I'm like, look at this new world I've never heard of. Like, I'm doing music professionally. And so we were traveling around the country on the weekends and going to other colleges and doing a cappella competitions and with other, there was girl groups, guy groups, co-ed groups, meeting people, really getting to the social world of it. And it was new to me. I'm only child, conservative Indian family, growing up very religious and things like that, not exposed to this. Suddenly I'm in college, like let loose into this world. And that's how it is for a lot of people regardless. It's just going to college is like a big thing.
It's like an opportunity to you have like a little bit of freedom. So for a while you kind of just like say, okay,
you just figure yourself out. And you figure out who you are and figure out the whole conversation and explore new things and people and cultures and social shift. It was a major social quantum shift for me, especially. I wasn't necessarily in high school hanging out with all the cool kids and doing that stuff. So for me, it was a major shift because suddenly I was in this a cappella group and we were super cool and I was in a group singing on stage and that gave me some sort of social proof, some social status I didn't have necessarily before. Before I was the student nerdy smart guy who was overachieving, and now I'm like this cool rock star guy who people are cheering for. We're performing for thousands of people, and that rush I think really shifted what I thought my path was going to be, from being doctor behind the scenes to being on stage, being a front man. I actually taking these talents as a violinist and as a singer, and so that's where violin came back. Was in college because now I'm a guitar player, I'm already a piano player, I'm a violinist, I'm a singer. Not very common at that age to be a multi-instrumentalist and singer and all those kind of things. People are doing one or the other. And so I ended up helping found a funk band called Grooveyard, which became a pretty well-known band in our college at the time. Was the lead singer and violinist going through wah-wah pedals and taking the violin to a whole new level of sound and putting it through pedals and, just taking, being creative with the violin in a way that I've never really heard before. It was always classical. And it became like a lead, like almost like having a lead guitar, but having a lead violin and doing what the guitar could do.
Were you playing with Brandon and John during college time?
So Brandon and John, who we can talk about for a second. So John, I met John Twyford.
Right.
Also, he's now going to be known as John Sylvia. Amazing artist, amazing singer. He is who I met in the acapella group, The Generics. The Generics was this amazing acapella group, the one I was talking about.
Okay.
Got pretty famous. They're to this day one of the bigger groups. Check them out on YouTube. The Generics, like spelled like generic, but.
And also the thing John is most well known for probably right now.
At this point he also a couple big things.
Okay.
He was like one of the top people on American Idol years ago, as well as later on. This is way later now. This is fast forwarding, but he became Judas in Jesus Christ Superstar,
right? Which
is a pretty major role, along with Ted Neely on his last ever tour. Ted Neely is the original Jesus from the original Jesus Christ Superstar from like the 70s.
Original Jesus.
Original for 40 something years, touring and doing off Broadway and all that stuff. So, but back to Brandon also. Brandon was like a friend of mine growing up, amazing guitar player. I was always inspired by him. He was performing and I was watching. I was doing the school thing and he was the one performing. And then we became roommates in college, and he wasn't part of the acapella group, but he was my roommate, and he's the one who kind of like really showed me about the beginnings of the studio world. Okay. And which is where I'm at now, thanks to Brandon. So, but yeah,
and that's Brandon
Fox. Right. So that's into the story where we get to LA, which we'll get to in a second too.
And so when did you move to LA?
Some time ago. It was about sometime in the last 10 years. It's honestly
not 10 years because I moved 10 years ago.
It was around the same time. But
around the same time. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've been here for a minute, and but I came out here to start to do music because after college, and this is finishing the college story in a quick summary. That's when I decided. You know what? I didn't even decide until right after college. I still was doing all this music and I was fed by it, and I still didn't. I got into finance actually right after college for a second, and got my series licenses, my Sigma 63 stuff like that. Got into mortgage banking and weird stuff like that because there was that math part of my brain, life insurance, and things like that. Just as a sort of intermediary of like, what am I going to do with my life? I was thinking about the Peace Corps. I was thinking about, I had an ex, who was with me at the time, and she was in a group. Her name's Kim, and she was in a girls group, and I met her through the acapella world, and we were together at that point, and we were just figuring out what we're doing. And she was super smart and motivated, and also did pre-med and was into music, and so we were both kind of like, we could go to London together and join this choir at St. Paul's Cathedral, or we could join the Peace Corps, or we could come out to LA because a couple friends of ours came out to LA before us. Started getting into acting and things like that, and just telling us about this entertainment world in LA. And we didn't know anything about this. This was like, what you can do? You can have fun and like in this playground of talent and actually excel there and make income doing like the things that we just were always hobbies and extracurricular activities. Sure. Wow, that's pretty cool.
Make your way out to the City of Angels.
So all of a sudden, 8 months after college, we decided to just drop this finance thing because she was with me doing the finance thing. We were together. We studied it together. We got licensed together. We had a partnership, and we were doing, Smith Barney and all this different stuff with mutual funds. And then we both decided, let's do this. We're both. She's talented. I'm talented. We're doing music, acting. Let's get out to LA. Okay. So we just packed up the car and drove out here. To do the LA, the Cali dream, head out west, packed the car with our stuff and sleeping bags, went camping across the country, went all to national parks in Colorado, and just backpacked our way across America with a guitar and a violin and a piano, like a keyboard, not a full piano, it's a car, and a computer. And just the stuff that I was using to record. And I had already recorded this DPAK acapella demo CD now that I was bringing to LA to show people. And try to meet some people in the business, in the industry, and try to figure out how to make it out here. So that was the move. We got here and started getting into it right away. And within the first 2 weeks in LA, a lot of amazing stuff happened really fast. I mean, it was like straight up going to Capitol Records and playing violin on the stairs and getting kicked off by security, and then eventually getting invited upstairs to do some recording with some like signed band with Virgin Records, and then being on Craigslist, clicking on the gigs. There's like a gig section and clicking refresh. Like literally, I was sitting there like, OCD POC. Like every 2 seconds, refresh, and then I'd see something that looked cool and I'd click on it and apply for it and then do the next thing. And then
Gigs on Craigslist. Does that still exist?
I'm not sure. I haven't been on Craigslist in years now.
Okay.
But that was a thing. There was gigs on Craigslist, and it was so I was like the first person to apply for so many gigs. So I was clicking refresh, and I was like, boom, hitting it so fast that I would get crazy gigs. I got this one gig on this movie called First Daughter with Michael Keaton and Katie Holmes, where they were looking for a violinist who happened to wear a 40 long jacket. I'm like, that's exactly me.
Okay.
So weird. And that was within less than 2 weeks. That was like 2 weeks in LA.
Okay.
And I got this gig, and I ended up getting put into the SAG, which is the Screen Actors Guild, which is an acting union.
Right.
And they did this thing called Taft-Hartley, where they pay for you and, like hook you up, and they just gave me all this money. And I was like, what is this magical LA place where I just click on stuff? And I got like thousands of dollars and got into a movie and got a credit and got into this union thing. And from there, that led to me to more acting gigs, and I got a manager and an agent. My friend Mike Russick, who's an amazing piano player, he managed me as an actor for a minute and then passed me off to a higher agency that managed me, and then they got me an agent, and that agent called JLA, Jack Lipman Agency, ended up getting me several auditions that I booked as a principal actor in a Cadillac Escalade commercial, riding an elephant as an Indian prince, vitamin water commercial as a dancer, because I was a dancer too.
Which you have the Cadillac commercial actually on the StarScript Network profile page right now.
Okay,
right?
Nice.
Yeah,
sweet.
Okay, so that was before we met. Then you did the Cadillac commercial.
No, I think that was after we met.
That was after we met.
Okay. I'm jumping around because I'm getting into like how it all kind of came together. I mean, it was really just a journey. It was a trajectory of just kind of feeling like this was definitely the path. Like things were kind of falling into place. And there's struggle for sure, but I feel like my story has been very lucky and blessed in a lot of ways in this industry. Where
but also very outgoing.
Yeah.
I feel like from the beginning, it seems like
Yes.
you've always been like a front man, entrepreneurial, just being well-rounded, like getting into lots of different things. So you already had some finance, you had the logic, the schooling and stuff like that. You had the musician side. I think a lot of musicians out there sometimes don't have the other side, and they have the emotional side, and they've got the tuning in, and they never quite get like the business side.
Yeah, you hear the whole phrase "starving artist," and
right.
There's been periods. Obviously, things go up and down, but for the most part, I've been pretty blessed financially out here and able to get gigs consistently, and always just been a hustler. Like if it's I'll just keep making calls, or I'll keep writing emails, or I'll do whatever it takes to get gigs. And I did that for a long time, and eventually saved money from. I did iPhone 5. Vitamin Water and Cadillac as principal roles in 3 national commercials, which if people know about how that they pay a lot of residuals, like tens of thousands of dollars on each one came in. And then I got a co-starring role on Modern Family, a TV show. So those are my 4 main acting credits. And I'd only done like 7 or 8 auditions and booked 4 of those. And I was living now in Malibu. And I met you years ago. So, and we'd met, you can tell them the story of that one. I mean, that's pretty funny.
Sure. Well, we met in Chicago, and then
doing finance, studying finance and law.
Finance, and which influenced me to move here pretty much. I just came out here to visit you. You said come out to LA. I was like, why would I want to come out to LA? If I'm going to California, I'll go to San Diego or Newport or some beachy town or something.
Totally.
Like LA just looks like this giant, crazy, like super congested, blah, blah, blah. You're like, I'll just come out and just hang out. And then sleeping on your couch for a little while.
You stay on my couch for a while, and then found a place in Venice, and boom, Zach, your boy's living in LA.
Right.
Now and you've been living in that same place ever since.
Been here ever since, right.
It's pretty awesome. And that was around the time that my band, The Bolt, was already out here too.
Right.
So that was part of the college stuff. It was like I had actually come out here with Kim, my ex, and my best friend John Sylvia, John Twyford, as a singer. It was really the 3 of us that that started this band called The Bolt. Which standed for Breath of Life Tribe, which actually became a second band eventually.
Right.
We formed 2 bands out of 1 band, which is a whole thing too. And then eventually, Kim moved back to the East Coast and built her business there, and John and I were out here together. And then John got American Idol and Jesus Christ Superstar, these big gigs, and he moved back to the East Coast. And then it was me and the Bolt solo with Brandon Fox. And then little by little, I started shifting the band more towards an Eastern conscious yoga type of music scene, which I discovered in LA. There's a big scene under Bhakti Fest and lots of other yoga festivals, Bhakti Yoga Shala, a lot of people in the yoga community really getting into meditation type music and sound healing. And I fell into that, and that's where I met a lot of people in the West LA scene, Burning Man type scene, a lot of people like that were really into like self-improvement, self-healing, self-awareness, into conversation, transformation type things through energy, through diet, through health and wellness, through being vegan, organic food, like a lot of like that culture of mixed cultures, connected to Burning Man and other things like that.
Right.
And so Breath of Life Tribe, as a separate entity from the Bolt stayed as a rock band, and we do gigs as a rock band, and then Breath of Life Tribe formed. It's split into two entities, and Breath of Life Tribe became this kirtan. Kirtan is the word in India for chanting sacred music and chanting the names, these divine names, and repeating them and getting the audience to sing with you. And we started touring the world, and that became my main live band for a while, because the Bolt had sort of, kind of naturally fizzled. With John moving back to the East Coast, Kim moving back to the East Coast, we still were doing Bolt shows, but it wasn't growing with the same trajectory. We were, on the path for record deals and stuff with Atlantic at the time. A lot of major stuff was happening. And so I ended up focusing on Breath of Life Tribe as my live band, and then behind the scenes really got into producing and getting into composing and producing. And that's where I started finding my niche as someone who can make income out here. Pretty good income, producing albums, doing stuff for TV and film, and getting involved in that scene, which has led me to where I am now with a couple feature films I've done music for with Brie Larson. I did a ton of music for a Brie Larson movie called Basmati Blues, and now I'm doing Disney. So it's sort of kind of a big summary there.
Okay.
And I haven't mentioned Robot Nature yet, which we'll get to.
Yeah, and we can get to Robot Nature, which actually started as a solo project.
Absolutely.
With you being by yourself, so you're not burdened by
all the band,
having all the band
bands.
and dealing with all of that, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to do it on my own, and even going as far as to eventually film a music video, and then just kind of, but I'll let you kind of go through it.
Yeah, so the beginnings of Robot Nature, I was at a place called Esalen, which is an amazing institute up in Big Sur, California, and historically it's brilliant because that's where the Beatles used to hang out. That's where Ravi Shankar, that's where Alan Watts, like one of the great philosophers of our time, used to hang out. And I discovered this place, again, through the Breath of Life Tribe, yoga world, where we were doing retreats and things all over the world, going to Europe, going to different places. And so I got brought to Esalen a number of times to be the musician, to help guide people on their yoga journeys or sound healing or meditation weekends, and fell in love with this place. And it's a place for epitomes for sure. Like I had some brilliant self-awareness, self-realizations and paradigm shifts that happened there. And one of them was I can't even remember how it happened. Just the idea of Robot Nature just sort of came into my head. It was about probably 6 years ago, really, that the idea started. As a concept, very futuristic based concept, thinking about the future of the world, what it could be like on a planet where Mars and Earth are coexisting as planets with different things happening. I don't want to get too much in the story of that right now.
Sure.
There's so much detail, but it's just the idea of a future-based world that's still not as dystopian as a lot of people like to convey. It still has a positive story around it, but it's still, there's a lot of lessons about humanity learned parallel to Atlantis and Atlantean lessons and things like that, and the Matrix, Westworld, things like that, AI, technology, robots.
Sure.
But so that concept came into mind, but then the music is really what formed as a solo project. Because again, this was like the Bolt had sort of now done its thing, and now I'm on my own thinking of my new mainstream. I used to use the phrase as songs in English that are popular that could catch you, end up on the radio, pop, rock, electronic, bands like Radiohead and things that really I fell in love with as a kid. We talked about earlier, I love the Beatles, I love Radiohead, I love Pink Floyd, stuff like that. And I've always envisioned having a band like that's touring for 30 or 40 years with like songs that everyone knows and sings along, like concept albums, rock operas or pop operas, whatever you want to call them, things like that. And so that's where Robot Nature formed as a solo idea, which I wasn't worrying about how I'd express it yet. It could be a band, it could be solo, it could be with a DJ. I was just thinking about the concept more, writing the songs, singing them solo, getting into live looping, which we can talk about more too. Like that's basically the idea. I think Ed Sheeran's a good example of someone who does that. A lot of people are very familiar with that in the world. And of him just going up there and playing the guitar for a second and then pressing his foot down on a pedal.
Right.
And all of a sudden now it loops by itself.
Right.
And then you do another layer and it loops by itself. And you can beatbox. And then that beatbox, all these layers start building, and you're basically building your own live band in the moment. It's like a live orchestra instantly, and you can take instruments out and build them back in and do a whole show by yourself. And that was sort of where I was at the time. In that we talked about, I had all these bands and there's so many people and personalities to deal with and gathering and practicing and like, when's rehearsal? What's up with everybody's schedules? I'm like, I'm gonna worry about that. I'm on myself right now.
Right.
It's very convenient. So I was just kind of thinking about that, and it was very robot nature, which is two seemingly opposite words that fit my personality as a Gemini. I had Breath of Life Tribe and the Bolt.
Right.
I was always like yin and yang going on all the time. And the double album I was creating for the Bolt and Breath of Life was inhale and exhale. So I've always had this kind of duality in my life, and now I've got robot nature, which has a duality in its name, but it's also a play on the phrase human nature. It's like, what's human nature? What are the characteristics of human nature? And now I'm thinking, what are the characteristics of robot nature?
Right.
And contrasting those two things. And human nature has emotion and connection and creativity and things like that, but it also has imperfection, all those kind of things. Right, and then robot nature has perfection and sharpness and infinite ability to calculate and function on a very high level, but also what is it lacking also? It doesn't necessarily have the creativity or the emotion and things like that. And seeing how we can bridge those two things together. Okay. And so there's a lot of that, and then thinking about that as a feeling, as a story, and then as a sonic expression. Like, what would that sound like? What was robot nature going to sound like? And that's where you get the blend of the acoustic instruments, the violin, the acoustic guitar mixed with synthesizers and programming and these sort of robotic kind of sonic elements, and blending those two together.
And we're going to get a live performance from you here today.
Oh, yeah.
But also, where can people check out? Well, I guess we'll get into how Robot Nature turned from a solo project into something else or something like a full band.
Where we are now,
in a moment. But we're just going to take a break a little bit. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And we'll be back in a moment.
All righty.
What's up, everybody? We're back. I'm here with the other DPAK from Robot Nature, and we're hearing about his story about how he got started as a musician, and also how Robot Nature, as it exists today, got started. And we're also going to get into what Robot Nature is currently working on right now, and then we're going to cover a little bit about DPAK's perspective on StarScript Legends and what's coming for StarScript in the future.
What's up, guys? We're back.
We're back. All right. So how did Robot Nature turn from a solo project into a full band?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty amazing story. So I was doing these solo loop. We were talking about the live looping. I was doing these solo looper gigs now just to try out these songs. And I got invited to a couple open mics in LA, and then went to these industry night with an old friend of mine named Sydney Alston. Who used to manage my sister-in-law at the time. And so I've known him for years. He's a bass player. He used to jam, hang out with the Bolt back in the day. I hadn't talked to him in a while, but I knew he was big in the industry. I mean, he'd gotten people record deals, worked with Warner Brothers, all kinds of big stuff. And he saw my social media, and I guess reached out. Or I think I saw him post something, and I think I reached out to him, and then he hit me back and said, "Hey, you want to play this industry night?" That's how it went down. Okay. I remember now, yeah. And then I was like, yeah, that'd be great. So I got invited and went to this industry night at Los Globos in Silver Lake, and got my looper pedals out and performed there. And he saw that with some of his industry friends. And he was like, whoa, that's some new stuff, because he'd only known the Bolt stuff. And he's like, yo, this stuff's pretty dope. I want to do another one. And so we ended up doing another one. And that was pretty much when he said, hey, let's talk about management. And that was pretty much how the band started. He's like, I went to his place, he listened to some songs, he was like, yo, this stuff, I think, I like your idea with the DJ and stuff, but I think this is going to need a big sound behind it. I've got a band right now that I'm managing. They just lost their lead singer. Their band was called End of Ever. That's Jesse Shaddis, Mikey Sklena, and Richard Pariser. And they just lost their lead singer. And hey, you want to go meet them? I was like, sure. So he takes me to their house. And there was a little bit of like, what's going on? Let's feel it out. But they came to my studio, and we did like a rehearsal on a couple songs, and immediately it felt good. And that was kind of like when you called me one day. You're like, "Hey, Zach, I think I have a band. I just got a band." Quick. And I was just like half distracted, being like, "That's cool, DPAK. Great, you got a band." You're like, "I'm sure you just got a band." You're like, "Yeah, I got a band real quick. I got a band." Yeah. And it turns out that it actually happened. That you did get a band. It was instant band. It was like within a day, I went from like suddenly just being a solo project to like having a fully put together band. And they were freaking awesome. I love these guys. We're all brothers. Already used to playing together. Already played together for 6 years or something like that. Already had all the gear and a lot of the technical things that was out of my league. Or I didn't want overwhelming things I want to think about. This and in-ear monitors and all the complex stuff that are needed to have a tight professional band. They had all that stuff. So I was just like, wow. And they were really open to learn a bunch of my songs, and then we were also open to write together. And so we played our first showcase 2 weeks after meeting, sold out the place, a bunch of people showed up, and it was immediate momentum. We started playing shows like crazy. Ended up at Burning Man playing with Alan Parsons Project for like 12,000 people, opening for the Wallflowers and Fuel and like all these big, quick things started happening with us. And then so that's the trajectory we've been on of just like, it's 2 years in and we're just rocking shows nonstop, recording nonstop. And now here we are in the studio working on our next single. We got 3 songs out now.
3 songs, and what are those songs?
All My Life came out first.
Okay.
And we did a music video for that. That was all last year. All our songs came out last year. Because we did our first year just playing tons of shows, getting the sound, feeling each other out.
And a lot of West Coast and South by Southwest.
West Coast, South by Southwest, Europe. Went to Europe and performed there. Went to Burning Man, performed there. And then did some NorCal shows, San Diego, Bay Area, lots of stuff like that. So ton of shows. I performed in like all over LA, the Troubadour and the Mint and Viper Room and all those kind of gigs. And again, built a following pretty fast. It really like built around the live thing first, which is interesting because in the music world, there's lots of ways to go. You can record first, get your sound, not do anything live, get it ready, finish your singles and get them all ready, and then start performing those songs for people after people know them. That's a very common thing. You get people knowing your songs. You get them on Spotify. People start wanting to hear them live. Then you do shows, which is actually an amazing path. In our case, ours were a little more old school in that we just played shows first, got people liking the songs and wanting to hear the recordings. The opposite. And so now the last year we've been recording, and we got All My Life out. Then we got Do You Want to Be a Star out, and then towards the end of this last year, we got all These Machines out.
And where can our viewers listen to your music?
Yep, robotnature.com, Robot Nature Spotify, Robot Nature Music on Instagram. Pretty much anywhere Robot Nature. And
YouTube, are they all on YouTube?
YouTube as well.
And then all of your artwork has this main running theme, which is done by
Rita, and Rita's the main artist, and Owen's her partner, who sometimes is involved with some of the pieces. But Rita's our main artist.
And Rita was our artist, our feature,
which I met through StarScript.
Right, and Rita was our interview for episode 2. So if you haven't seen it yet, be sure and go back and check that out.
Yeah, Zach met Rita first, and then you met her, and then introduced her to me, and so now she's part of the greater team of all of us.
Part of the crew.
Yeah, part of the crew. So yeah, those are great. And now we're working on our 4th single called Take the Big Love. So that'll be out.
And that's what maybe you'll play for us here in a second.
Sure, yeah, we got that going on in the back. I'm in the thick of it, but it should be soon.
And then there's a song that you're going to be performing for us today. And
this song is actually one of the first songs. It's actually one of the oldest songs for the project, called Like I'm a Robot.
And it's one of my favorite.
Oh, nice, sure. Yeah. So I'm going to do an acoustic version of that, but that song will be out later this year with the band too.
Okay. So we're getting all our viewers are getting a pre-released version of I'm a Robot.
Yeah, not out yet, but I'll do an unplugged version of it here.
Cool. Okay.
So that'll be fun. We'll knock that out in a bit.
Okay.
But yeah, that's where we are now. And,
so that's where you're currently at. And while all this is going on, it sounds like you're probably pretty busy doing all this stuff, but there's just something else that's been going on at the same time over the last year. And what's that?
This is the biggest thing for sure, is Disney. I mean, my work with movies and TV film and working behind the scenes led me to a whole nother world, separate than the live performance frontman. It's like there's almost like these different pockets of the entertainment industry. So this is more the TV film behind the scenes, the production world. And in that world, it's like a whole different group of people that are writing songs and people that are involved on producing and directors and music supervisors and all kinds of cool stuff that's there. And there's income to be made in the movie world. There's budgets and there's allocations for producers and composers and things like that. So I entered that world as a great way to make income over the years. I produced independent artists here in my studio. This is the behind the scenes DPAK, right? So you got frontman performing and putting the songs out to the world, DPAK, and then you've got behind the scenes DPAK here. And so I got involved with Boston Blues with Brie Larson and all them too. And then then some of the stuff I did with that led me to this Disney gig. Now there's a show called Mira Royal Detective, which launches March 20th. Which is, they just got announced 2 days ago.
So I'm guessing on Disney Plus, people are going to be able to check it out.
The whole season will be released to Disney Plus once it's out. It's going to stream first episode by episode on Disney Junior. That's the streaming platform, Disney, or the typical Disney Channel, Disney Junior. That's where people for all these years have been watching Disney. And then the show as a whole, every time a season's complete, the whole thing will end up on Disney Plus. Okay, this is how it goes. And so then, I'm for that show, I'm the consultant. Which is I'm the bridge because it's the first ever Indian inspired
a cultural consultant.
Cultural music cultural consultant. Representing Indian music, also orchestrator, and I'm also a performer as well on the songs as a singer, as a violinist, and I'm producing basically. So I'm recording So I'm taking the songs that are already written by this amazing songwriting team that they've Emmy nominated, been involved with Nickelodeon, Disney, you name it. These are like amazing songwriters that I work with, Jeannie and Matt. Matthew Tischler and Jeannie Lurie, and then and they're like the brains behind it, and then they bring me in to make sure that it has that sound, that cultural, that Indian authentic sound and the instrumentation. And I hire amazing musicians to play on the stuff, like a Bansuri flute player named Sheila Bringi, Neelamjit Dillon on tabla, sitar, Rajib on sitar, and other musicians from Mumbai and India. And I'm basically orchestrating this Indian huge sound, but it's still that classic Disney sound. Like Aladdin has a Persian sound, but it's still Disney.
Right,
Lion King has some African elements, but it's still Disney. There's a certain element of like the songwriting and the catchiness that's always like that theatrical, like that voice, like Frozen and all those kind of things. It has all that stuff. And now this one has the Indian sounds underneath it all that I'm producing, recording right here in my studio, editing, sending back, and then to Disney, and then it's getting put on the TV shows. We did 25 songs last year. And the first season is now done, and it's been officially announced as of in the last week or so. And the premiere is going to be in a couple weeks. And it's going to be a worldwide premiere, U.S. and India, on March 20th on all over.
Wow, so everybody, all of our viewers can go check it
Yep,
out.
you can all watch it. And it's full on Mira, Royal Detective, and it's going to be amazing. Lots of top A-list Indian actors, South Asian actors doing the voiceovers. It's animated. Like legend, Zakir Hussain is like the most famous, like a lot of your viewers are going to know this guy. He's like a famous Indian percussionist, tabla player, and a lot of stuff like that. He's on the main title. So we're talking like the top are involved. And that's how Disney do. Disney don't mess around.
Okay, and I wanted to just kind of pop in the studio real quick.
Here we go.
And
studio.
Just show us, just give a little bit of maybe just a couple minute tour about what you're working on and how your flow is right now. So where you're at in the stage of development.
I'm literally in the middle. Like this is the timing of you walking in. I'm literally like in the process here with the band of producing and finishing this next single called "Take the Big Love." So you kind of see like, I don't know how the screen works here, but you can see this is a Logic session. There's lots of layers. There's vocals and there's live drums and bass and lots of different instruments like that. And so you get like a little taste of what this sounds like for a second. I can solo different things like that. I can move to different parts of the song.
I'm on the edge with you, begging for more, begging for more. Why do we burn so hard? Just
let it play for a minute, but you get the idea.
Dangerous. Yes, I need to separate to test our fate. You always seem to see it in my eyes. Now I don't need to doubt you, don't belong without you. Shake me when you wanna take me down, down, down. Why not take the big love? We can celebrate with a feeling of la la la.
There you go, a little taste of that right there. So yeah, so there's a ton of layers going on right there. So it's basic studio flow. You can solo things right here just to give you like an idea. We're in Logic for all you producers out there or people that are into it. They can solo the vocals. That's just the vocals by itself.
Help me find my way. Yes, I need to separate to test our faith. There's never
Synthesizers. Some bass. That's the bass, and then we got the drums. And you hear everything together.
And this is all done with Logic.
Yeah. This is all recorded, with all of this equipment we have here. We got amazing microphones. We got API preamps we're using for the drums and Neves. We got a U47 mic, lots of Neumanns. And then we just record the band. Like we record the whole band live together. And actually, this particular song started during the fire. That's another thing we didn't mention earlier.
We didn't, and we'll probably have to do we'll get to do a couple other interviews this year. Even I'm planning on it because I want to go into that and even maybe show some of the video from that.
But the summary of that basically is like there was a fire, my house burned down in it. We were about to record in my studio that day. So the reason I mention is because this studio called Treehouse. I'm gonna give them the shout out. Treehouse Studios actually were so generous that they allowed us to do a lot of the song at their studio. We cut the drums there. Normally we cut them here. So this song was started there, and now we're finishing it here. So that's basically I was mentioning the fire.
Awesome.
But yeah, they're awesome, and now we're pretty much close to mixing it and recording and getting it out.
And do you have a release date yet?
I don't want to set one yet because we're so close. We're aiming for around the time we leave for South by Southwest, so March 13th, sometime between March 13th and March 20th. around the time of the premiere.
So maybe
that,
end
so.
of Q1, beginning of Q2, somewhere around there.
Yeah, we're looking mid to late March to get the song ready.
And then,
ready
so
to
you're
go.
going to be at South by Southwest, so people can look for you if they're going to attend that. And do you have any shows that are coming up right now that you want to let everyone know?
We want everyone to come to March 7th at the Troubadour. That's going to be our big party. We're going to celebrate the release of the song. We're going to celebrate going to South by Southwest.
Is that Hollywood?
Yeah, West Hollywood.
West Hollywood,
The
okay.
Troubadour, it's an amazing venue. Our friends Dirty Diamond are hosting the night. And so we were invited to be one of the bands to play there. They're an amazing band too, the Dirty Diamonds. My friend Sam Babayan. But yeah, we'll be there on Saturday, March 7th. We're at 7:00 p.m. is when the doors open. We're going to be the first band to play that night.
Okay. Well, great. Well, we're definitely going to be doing some more interviews later on because there's lots of story to cover. With you, you've got a pretty deep history. We've got a pretty deep history. I think we're at like our 10-year anniversary. Actually, we're at our, I think, 11-year anniversary.
We're on 11, bro.
Getting there because I moved to LA on January 20th. 2010.
Wow.
So January 20th, 2020 was my 10-year anniversary. I knew you a year before that.
09, we were hanging out for sure.
So 09 we were hanging out. So now I'm going to segue a little bit. I wanted to ask you a little bit about StarScript Legends.
Oh, yeah.
You've been pretty much one of my model profiles for when I'm building the prototype. You're the profile that I create. Of course, I could create my own, which I will have. But a lot of times I'm working on you just because it's a third party.
Sure.
And you've got all your material and stuff, and I get to see how it looks. So just as a brief, summary, and we have a video that fully covers an introduction to the StarScript Legends story production platform version 1.0. But just summarizing real quick, it is a crowdfunding platform, subscription-based.
Oh, yeah.
Like Patreon, there's social elements. So all creators, all fans get to create their own profile. They can search all types of digital productions on the platform. So Robot Nature is going to be one of those productions that are on there. And one of the stories that would be on there would be perhaps one of the albums that are coming out.
Yeah,
it could be your first album.
Or the whole future story that's being written anyway.
Sure, because you have the story as well, which
Yep.
this platform is meant for multimedia mix and match. And you may have written music, all different types of media, AR, VR, which I know you're interested in getting to as well. So I guess my question for you is if there in creating a platform that's meant to comprehensively cover digital production, marketing that production, and then the experience itself, what feature are you looking most forward to? And also with your experience in using Spotify and YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and social media, and to have something that more can be a unified place where you can perform the production, marketing, and experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love the idea that it's so consolidated, and also in the creative world, there's so many people that are involved, and that's like a big thing. It's like how do you figure out what their roles are and who deserves what for what their roles are as a creative person. As a songwriter, I might write a song, might write most of the song, and then suddenly, someone else might come in later and be a part of that song, and figuring out what piece they deserve of that song. And so I think what's really cool about StarScript is the fact that it breaks down creative pieces in a structure that could be blockchain related, where it measures the way, how royalties are distributed, things like that,
right,
in a very measurable and accountable way, and it's instant. Something within the music world, you got to wait 3 months, 6 months, a year to get your royalties from ASCAP. If it's coming through a blockchain network of instant stuff and it's happening and it being tabulated right away, everyone can getting paid instantly for their piece that they deserve, and it's all accounted for. So that organization is pretty rare.
And you can contribute to many different projects. You'll have your main project, and for you'd be contributing to all types of other people's products.
Well, collaboration is the big thing.
Sure.
I could jump in. I can go. Rivrita's doing the artwork. We're doing that, and then there's a piece of intellectual property that it's really about. For me, the biggest thing is the IP and how that's being allocated, and all the people that can be involved, and all the collaboration that can happen. I can jump in on someone else's thing and do music for them, and now I'm a part of their IP as a musician. They jump in as an artist. They're part of the IP for my thing. I can come up with a story idea, and I'm saying we can all just kind of collaborate a lot, and it's all consolidated into one place. And it can be showcased. You can look at videos. You can connect with community. You can share, comment on each other's stuff. So it has like the best of kind of everything in one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good. So basically, the team building element,
yeah,
the
team building, IP,
automatic
collaboration,
payments,
and social media and sharing ability,
Beautiful.
all in one place. I mean, there's nothing else really out there like that yet.
So everybody definitely check out DPAK. He's got a profile on the StarScript network. You could join today at starscriptlegends.com. Also, you can contribute to our crowdfunding campaign. It hasn't officially been launched yet, but we do have people who are contributing, which I thank you for. And contributors to our crowdfunding campaign do get to test the platform when before it's released to the public. So if you're interested in becoming an alpha, beta, or even pre-alpha tester, giving lots of feedback on the platform, if you're an independent creator or an artist and you want to influence that production, be sure to make a contribution, and we thank you so much. And that's it for today. We've definitely got lots more that we can cover, but we'll be back for another interview.
It's a life.
And,
it's a life.
And we're also going to give you a good performance, acoustic performance from the other DPAK here, which is going to be I'm a Robot. So stay tuned for that, and thanks everyone for watching.
Like I'm a robot.
Oh, wait, one more thing. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. Let your friends know. Also, if you know anyone else, other creators out there who have an awesome story to tell, be sure and contact us and let us know, and maybe we'll have them featured here on the StarScript Observatory. Till next time.
Get it.
Morning rain, I decided that I was in love again. You called my name and I hear you say, hey, come over. And I say yes, like I'm a robot. I've been trying to hide it. There's no way now I can fight it. Oh, but I know that I don't trust myself. Like I'm a robot, like I'm a robot. 'Cause when I'm next to you, I feel like I'm a robot. I am so amazed, yeah, by your fashion. And you don't even have to try. Oh, it seems so easy for you. Oh, to start a dream just for two. But I know that I don't trust myself. Like I'm a robot, like I'm a robot, yeah. 'Cause when I'm next to you, I feel like I'm a robot, like I'm a robot, like I'm a robot, yeah, yeah, like I'm a robot, oh, like I'm a robot, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, right in my eye, yeah, I don't see my life, and I know that I don't trust myself, yeah, yeah, and I know that I just need some help with my heart, yeah, and I just need some help with my heart. Ooh, and so I start dream for two. And so I start a dream of you, like I'm a